For the past year, I've been doing an ongoing series comparing my Triumph Bonneville 865 versus my Moto Guzzi V7 750 versus my Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, and today I'm going to finally tell you which one is the best mid-size retro motorcycle for me. I'm Adrian from eMotorcycle. This is the 9th episode in my series, and today we're going to be comparing the last two bikes left in this series, which is the Bonneville and the V7, and looking at how they compare in the city, on the highway, with reliability and maintenance, and with dealer support and parts availability after a year of owning both. So how do they compare, and which of these two motorcycles will I be keeping? Let's find out. First, a quick backstory in case you're new to this series. About a year ago, I wanted to get a mid-sized retro motorcycle to add to my garage. And yeah, it would have been nice to buy one brand new, but that's a lot of money. I already have some other bikes. So I started thinking about the used market. Should I go with the established leader of the pack and get a used Bonneville? Should I try something a little bit newer that came with a much cheaper price tag initially and buy a used Royal Enfield? Or should I embrace tradition and check out the Moto Guzzi? It's the only motorcycle, well, the only mid-sized retro motorcycle that's still being made in Europe. I became obsessed with trying to get the best bang for my buck and not wanting to make the wrong decision. So for the price of buying just one of these motorcycles brand new, I was like, hey, I can buy all three of them used. For each motorcycle, I have a maximum budget of $36.50 US, something that I think is probably feasible for most people getting into motorcycling or who are looking for a second bike. And that's going to cover basically the cost of the bike, the cost of any repairs that it might need to get it running, and if there's any money left, then we can do some upgrading and have a little fun with it. The idea of keeping all of these motorcycles stuck at the same level playing field was basically that it doesn't matter how much this one cost when it was brand new or how much that one cost when it was brand new. The whole point is, what is the best bang for your buck, the best value for your dollar right now, today? So set an even playing field and we can compare everything evenly. At the end of the series, I will keep the one motorcycle that is best for me and sell the rest. The first motorcycle to be sold was the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. I've already made a video comparing the Interceptor versus the Bonneville and the V7, so we won't be doing that again, but I will say this. The Interceptor isn't a bad motorcycle. It's actually a pretty good motorcycle, but it falls short in performance and in fit and finish versus both the Bonneville and the V7. And the used Interceptor cost me more than any of these three bikes. So the value that you get buying a newer used Interceptor isn't really strong enough in my mind compared to the quality and performance of motorcycle that you get buying a used Triumph or used Moto Guzzi. Enough with the backstory. Let's put the Bonneville and the V7 head to head and see how they compare. So how do these two motorcycles compare as inner city, daily riders, daily commuter motorcycles? We're going to look at what these motorcycles do right, what they do wrong, and probably most critically, how they get the job done in two very different ways. Just to paint the picture for you, I live in Toronto. It's a city of over 3 million people, known for having some of the worst traffic in North America due to how terrible our infrastructure is here and how bad our city planning is. That could be a whole other video. What you need to worry about is just that these bikes have both been little rays of sunshine in my everyday kind of inner city commuting, riding around.
Oh, the girl in the Vespa smiled at me. What is this guy doing? That's not a road. That's not a road, bud. Oh boy.
They both offer upright ergonomics that will let you see comfortably over traffic ahead of you. And pragmatism aside, let's be honest, a lot of people get into retro motorcycles for the looks, and both of these motorcycles turn heads everywhere they go. I know it's been all good news so far, but these bikes have a flaw for inner city riding and commuting, and I have to harp on it a little bit. Neither motorcycle is liquid cooled. The V7 has these huge jugs that stick out on either side, and that does help it get more airflow. And the Bonneville has an oil cooler, and that also helps a little bit. But if you're in bumper to bumper rush hour traffic, like maybe it's a Friday before a long weekend and everyone's trying to leave the city at the same time, you are going to be stuck sitting there feeling the heat coming off these bikes if you don't have enough space to, zigzag your way through. Other than that, for day-to-day city riding, it's difficult to find faults with these motorcycles. Yes, they don't have the latest tech, but that's not what this kind of bike is about. I'll be honest, ABS would be nice. Neither bike has ABS, but I've been riding almost 20 years without ABS, so I can wait a little longer. And newer bikes will have stuff like traction control, rider modes, slipper clutches, but I mostly care about that kind of stuff at faster speeds. I don't really care about it for the kind of riding I do in the city. The real difference I see between these motorcycles aren't in their capacity to get the job done around town and through traffic and get you to work and back every day. They both do that really well. The difference that I see is in how they do their work. Everything about the Bonneville is like super smooth, very linear, very predictable. If you picture a stuffy old British man drinking tea, this is the motorcycle he'd prefer. The V7, on the other hand, it's rougher, it's more agricultural, it's more brutish in its power delivery. If the Bonneville is the complacent tag-along friend who's just happy-go-lucky and is grateful to be there with you for your ride, the V7 is your bubbly, over-caffeinated Italian who had 2 espressos before he even left for work in the morning, and he wants to take you on a hell of a ride with him. If you think back to that stuffy old British man drinking his tea, picture his son or maybe his grandson who would rather play rugby in a muddy field than sit at home drinking tea. That British rugby player, I'm pretty sure the V7's the motorcycle he would prefer. Now, in terms of peak power, the Bonneville is, without a doubt, the more powerful of the 2 motorcycles. But that's important on the highway, which we'll talk about later, not so much in the city, where peak numbers don't really tell the story. Because in the city, the Moto Guzzi doesn't feel slow. If anything, because the V7 makes peak torque at 2,800 RPMs compared to the Bonneville at, I think, almost 6,000 RPMs, the V7 feels more perky, more spontaneous, more rambunctious, more caffeinated than the Triumph. Whether or not it actually is faster, the V7 feels faster because the torque delivery is so quick and down low. And of course, we can't talk about power and riding through a congested city without also mentioning weight. The Bonneville weighs 495 pounds wet compared to the V7, which weighs only 395 pounds wet. That is 100 pounds more, or 25% heavier, more weight on the Bonneville. And when you're riding, the Bonneville doesn't feel heavy at speeds, but you will notice it a little bit at like parking lot speeds, and you'll also definitely notice it a little bit. I notice it when I'm pushing that bike around the garage. It weighs nothing. When I'm pushing this bike around the garage, it's not heavy, but you feel it's a big lump of steel, and you feel it. However, a little more weight does equal a little bit more size, and that's a good thing for the Bonneville. The Bonneville seat is about 2 or 3 inches longer across than the V7 seat is, and that's great if you're going to be picking up your girlfriend and taking her for a spin very often. She will definitely find the Bonneville more spacious of the 2 motorcycles. The Bonneville seat is actually the same length as the seat on the BMW GS bike that we do all of our 2-up touring on. So size does matter, and a couple extra inches can go a long way in your relationship when it comes down to seat size. I'll wrap up this section by saying that the V7 does offer you a little bit more as an inner city warrior than the Bonneville does. You get Brembo brakes, you get steel braided brake lines, you get noticeably better suspension. And I'm not saying the suspension on this bike is great by any means, but the shocks on the Bonneville, I made a whole video on them, are just so junky. And the brakes are a little bit of a wooden feel on the Bonneville compared to the V7. So overall, in the city, this is probably a better package. You will be happy riding either one though, as an inner city commuter. So I will give the Bonneville a B- grade, and I'll give the V7 a solid B. So the V7 is marginally better than the Bonneville. Big deal. What happens when you take these 2 motorcycles on the highway or out touring? Well, that's when the Bonneville's 865cc motor has the upper hand compared to the V7's 744cc motor. The V7 makes only a very cruiser-like 50 horsepower at around 6,200 RPM compared to the Bonneville's 67 horsepower at 7,500 RPMs. This one likes to rev up and go. I mean, does it though? Like, neither one of these motorcycles are particularly fast, and given that they're naked motorcycles, you will get a punch of wind on your chest. If you do want to get into touring though, I strongly recommend a fly screen, probably a little bit bigger than the one I have on the V7. There are companies like Hepco and Becker that make not only windscreens, but also mounts and hard cases that will go on either bike. So you can definitely get some hard luggage on these if you do want to. So yes, you could equip either one of these bikes for touring, but am I going to sell my BMW GS over there and start touring on either one of these motorcycles? Heck no. But you could. My friend Madeline Missrider, missrider.com, you can check her out. She has ridden her Bonneville 865 across North America, I think twice. My friend Glenda has ridden her V7 750 across much of North America as well. I don't even think Glenda rides with a windscreen. So you can tour on either one of these bikes if that was what you really wanted to do. The V7 on the highway does feel like it wants to be pushed a little bit. You know, you will be probably wanting a little bit more performance out of it. The flip side is that the Bonneville, by comparison, is just so boringly compliant that it leaves you wanting more character. There's no thrill riding this thing on the highway, even though it's the faster bike. But at the end of the day, 67 horsepower compared to 50 horsepower is a noticeable difference on the highway. And you might be thinking that one advantage the Bonneville has going for it is that if you are doing a long tour far from home and you break down in the Bonneville, you're probably more likely to be closer to a Triumph dealer than you are to a Moto Guzzi dealer. Based on the research I did on parts availability and dealer support, that could be a moot point. We'll talk about it a little bit later because there are significant wait times for getting parts for either bike. And the last thing to consider in this section is if you are going to be doing any kind of touring on the Bonneville for whatever reason, you know, if you're going to be out for a couple weeks, you might want to bring chain lube with you. You might want to bring tools to adjust your chain with you. That stinks. On the V7, it's shaft drive. You don't have to worry about any of that. You just go. So for highway and touring, I would give the Bonneville a C+, and I would give the V7 a C. And yes, I'm a hard marker. I'm sorry. Reliability and maintenance is something I know a lot of you guys ask about. Once I got both motorcycles set up properly, there was only a couple minor issues to report. So the V7 was purchased as a theft recovery motorcycle. So it needed a lot of love up front to get it into a good running condition again. Since then though, it's been great. I have a few videos where I've shown you guys the work that we did to get it from looking like it was stolen by a crackhead to actually looking respectable again. You can check those out. But Carlo at Motomotori did point out that I'm already out of clutch cable adjustment. I think the V7s have a reputation of going through clutch cables relatively quickly, but with only about 9,000 miles or 14,000 kilometers on this thing, it's still kind of disappointing. Should this motorcycle win the Best Midsize Retro Motorcycle for Me series, I would need to order a clutch cable right away because, well, you'll see the wait time on Moto Guzzi parts. As for the Triumph, there were some minor setup pains to get through. First, the previous owner had a shop install these super uncomfortable aftermarket handlebars, and I needed to try a bunch of different risers to make it finally fit right for me. Okay, so obviously that isn't the motorcycle's fault, but check this out. The handlebars that come for this motorcycle, I don't know if you guys can see, have holes pre-drilled into them, right? So if you want to replace the handlebars on this generation of Triumph Bonneville, you have to either buy a handlebar specifically made for that bike, or you have to buy a brand new handlebar and then figure out where you need to drill holes into your handlebar to make it work with that bike. If you ever see someone who designed this thing and meet them, ask them why they hate us, because this is BS and we shouldn't have to do this. The other issue was that the previous owner was a high school teacher who got his high school's auto shop teacher to do the last oil change on this bike. Now I have a video on YouTube that shows you step by step looking at Triumph service manual and then showing you guys how to do those steps on the bike, how to change the oil and filter on a Triumph Bonneville 865. Apparently this shop teacher never looked at the video because as soon as I took the Bonneville on the highway, I knew immediately that something was wrong. The bike was lacking power. I rode back home immediately, checked the oil level. There was 600 milliliters of too much oil in here. So the moral of the story is high school teachers will never stop trying to ruin your fun. I went back on the highway afterwards. Everything ran great again. Bike was perfect until the Bonneville started to develop this intermittent issue where sometimes I hit the starter and nothing happened at all.
Oh, what the?
So I did a battery voltage test and a battery load test, and yes, I have videos that show you how to do that too. Everything was fine.
Well, why don't you work then?
I took it to Power Sports TO, my local Triumph dealer, and Ogie, the tech, came out, took a look at it. He wiggled a thing by the clutch switch. And basically that is the safety switch. You can't start these bikes unless the clutch is fully activated. Ogie said that sometimes those things just get kind of loose. You just got to push them back in again. And ever since then, I've had no more problems with the Bonneville. So now that we've addressed past issues and upcoming issues, what's maintenance been like? Well, as far as maintenance concerns, both of these motorcycles have been really easy to deal with, but they both have their quirks. So for example, the Moto Guzzi oil filler cap is shaped like whatever shape that is called. And you can either use a wrench that'll probably scratch it, or you can spend $20 for a tool that literally its only purpose is to remove your oil cap. Like, are you kidding me? Anyway, for some reason, Triumph sees that stupid design and says, hold my beer, mate, I can do you one better. And they put these stupid underseat screws in that go so deep under the seat, they're such a pain in the butt to get out. And this wouldn't be an issue if not for the fact that the seat has to come off to get to your battery. And if you're on the side of the road, this is a major pain in the butt. Here's what I mean. Deep breath, ready? There's supposed to be an Allen key under the side cover, so you would need to have a coin in your pocket or ask a stranger for a coin to take out this screw, to take off your side cover, to take the Allen key out from underneath the side cover, to get to underneath your seat, to remove the 2 screws, 1 and 2, to get access to your battery. Then you need to use the Allen key to put the screws back in, put the seat back in there, put the Allen key back in your side cover, use your coin or borrow another one from a different stranger to put your motorcycle back together again. And again, if you ever meet somebody who works at Triumph, ask them why do they hate us. Also, please leave me a comment and let me know why you think that companies like Guzzi and Triumph overcomplicate what should be really simple things like taking your oil cap off or changing your handlebar or accessing your motorcycle's battery. I feel like I have a conspiracy theory for why they want to make things harder for us. I'd love to know what you guys think. Please let me know. Why do manufacturers overcomplicate very simple things? Leave me a comment. On the V7 side, you get shaft drive like I already talked about, so that's awesome. So you only need to service that once every 2 years. Just drain the fluid out, top it up again. You don't have to worry about lubricating or cleaning or adjusting a chain, so that's awesome. And for people who want to do valves themselves, the Bonneville, it's not tricky to do. You will have to lift the gas tank a little bit. Honestly, the hardest part is kind of getting the gasket to sit right, because it's a really funky shaped gasket, and getting the thing back on without moving is kind of tricky, but whatever. On the V7, it's actually super easy though, because the jugs, they stick out on the side, so everything is just really accessible. You don't have to lift the gas tank, nothing. Other than that, both bikes are easy to work on. There's no bunch of plastic stuff everywhere. Like, what you see is what you get. Both can be equipped with a center stand that are optional on both, unfortunately not stock. The Bonneville, I'm going to give a B+ for reliability and maintenance. The V7, I'm going to give an A- because, like the Bonneville, it is simple and straightforward, and it mostly just works. But you also get the added benefit of low maintenance shaft drive. So if you do a lot of riding, that's kind of a nice feature to have. Overall, the V7 is easier to work with. You just might have to replace a clutch cable or 2 more than you would with this bike. And finally, here we are with the thing that people worry about when it comes to non-Japanese brands: dealer support, parts availability. Where can I get this thing serviced? Can I get parts for it? How long is this all gonna take? I'm super lucky. I can ride to my Triumph dealer in about 7 minutes. I can ride to my Guzzi dealer in 14 minutes. And if either one of them were to close, I could get to the next closest set in about 45 minutes each. But I totally get that quite a few of you guys have left me a comment saying my nearest Triumph dealer or my nearest Guzzi dealer is in the next state over. So before you decide what mid-size retro motorcycle is best for you, you're definitely going to want to take a look around you and see what your distances and times are like. Now let's talk about parts. Full disclosure, total brutal honesty. I had to wait like months to get certain parts for my Moto Guzzi, but these were things that typically are never replaced over the life of a motorcycle, so I'm willing to be a little bit more forgiving of that. And that just had to do with the state of that this bike was in when I bought it. So instead of focusing on those, I made a list of the top 5 most commonly replaced OEM motorcycle parts. I looked up the part number for each of these parts for both brands. Then I got on the phone, I called up both dealers, and I asked them for the prices and availability of all of these parts. Give me a like if you've ever had to replace your handlebar, your brake lever, your clutch cable, or your shift lever. Hit that like button. Here is the information that I got from them. So the Bonneville handlebar is $171 US compared to the V7 at $83. That's insane. The Triumph one has those stupid pre-drilled holes that I mentioned earlier, and I suspect that Triumph knows they can charge more because people don't want the headache of having to line up the holes perfectly and all of that jazz. And the Guzzi handlebar is just a normal freaking handlebar. Let's talk about brake levers now. The brake lever on the Triumph is $63 compared to the Guzzi at $20, 1/3 the price. Because again, Triumph stuff is a little bit more complicated. Triumph has made the brake levers adjustable. The Guzzi lever isn't. I really like adjustable levers, but I don't like that Triumph is charging me 3 times the price when I know it's not costing them 3 times as much to make. I'm definitely getting hit with a premium here. The Triumph part is available in 1 week. If the Guzzi lever is in stock today, I can go pick it up. My dealer keeps these on hand. Similarly, the Triumph has an adjustable clutch lever, which is $67 compared to the non-adjustable Guzzi at $54. I have no idea why Moto Guzzi charges $54 for a clutch lever and only $20 for a brake lever. That doesn't seem that much more complicated to me, but what do I know? Yeah, whatever. Triumph clutch cable is again more expensive, $43 versus $20 for the clutch cable on the Guzzi. I don't know what you're getting for twice the price with the Triumph part, other than the bag it comes in has a Triumph logo on it. It just seems like Triumph, you get a premium. With this exception, the Triumph shift lever, finally the first part where Triumph wins. It's $119 versus $164 for the Moto Guzzi part, and the Triumph part you wait 1 week, the Moto Guzzi part you are waiting about a month. In total, we're looking at $462 for the Triumph parts, all 5 of them, versus about $341 for the same parts for Moto Guzzi. So Triumph parts are on average a little more complicated, and you're going to pay 35% more for those parts. In wait times, we're looking at 7 days for basically every single part on the Triumph versus about a 10.5 day wait time for the average Guzzi part. I'm going to give both of these motorcycles a B- for dealer support and parts availability. But that is really subjective to me because, again, I live close to these dealers. They're really patient. I can call them up with a bunch of part numbers and ask them for when I can get them and what the prices are and not order any of them, and they don't hate me too much, hopefully. I know a lot of you guys won't have that same experience of having a dealer down the street that you can just pop in at. So it's a B- for me. It might be less for you. Okay, moment we've been waiting almost a year, or in my case over a year, to figure out what is the best mid-size retro motorcycle that we can affordably get at around $36.50 US. It's a Triumph Bonneville 865. It looks great, the finish quality is top notch, it's great in the city, it makes enough power, it's very versatile, it's got a ton of aftermarket parts available for it, there's a huge following for it online, it gets looks everywhere it goes, you can't gas up without some old man wanting to talk to you about your motorcycle. It's the fastest of the trio, and yes, it has absolutely no personality compared to the V7, and the rear suspension makes it feel like it was made from melted down bobby pins. Like but it's fuel injected, it's simple, it's reliable, there's no unnecessary tech with this bike, and most importantly, it does pretty much whatever you ask it to. It is the best mid-size retro motorcycle in the series, but I'm getting rid of it. I'm not keeping this bike. Because from the very first episode of the series, almost a year ago, I said I was trying to find the best mid-size retro motorcycle for me. The Bonneville might be the best mid-size retro motorcycle of the 3, but the best one for me is the V7. The Bonneville is definitely the better motorcycle in a lot of ways that do matter to me. Like, I do a lot of riding with a passenger, so I will miss not having the longer seat. Your passenger will have a better riding experience on the Bonneville than they will on the V7. The Bonneville is the better highway bike too compared to this thing. But if I'm thinking about what's best for me, I don't need my retro motorcycle to do two-up duties or highway duties or touring duties. I have a Vespa that we love riding around downtown Toronto on. I have BMW GSs that we love doing touring on, and the BMW is going to be better at two-up riding, touring, and highway riding than either one of these motorcycles. So I don't need my retro bike for that. The V7 in the city is way more fun than the Bonneville by leaps and bounds. The suspension is already better to start on the V7, and considering how little I've spent on this bike, I still have room to up that suspension if I really want to. The Bonneville looks like a classic. But compared to my V7, it's a classic everyone's already seen 1,000 times before. The Bonneville leans heavily into its heritage while quietly ignoring the fact that it's made in Thailand. The V7 is still made in Italy, still made in the same factory it was made in half a century ago, made in the factory that I got to do a tour of and a visit of when I was doing my ride across Italy last year. That'll be my next series. Hit subscribe if you're interested in seeing that. I'll take you through the Moto Guzzi Museum. My goal with the series was never to tell you what you should or shouldn't buy. My goal with the series was to give you the reality of being an owner of each of these 3 motorcycles, because I think when people just review a motorcycle, they can only really give you half of the story. But I also think that when people own a motorcycle, but they only own one motorcycle from that category, they tend to have a really biased view in favor of what they're financially, emotionally, and ego invested in, and their reviews don't always tend to be the most realistic either. So my goal with this series was to try and share the reality of owning all three bikes, the good and the bad and the ugly, and to keep it as real with you guys as absolutely possible. And I know that my honesty and my directness can rub some people the wrong way, or made me some enemies I've come to realize. But I hope you guys understand, I was never saying that your motorcycle is bad or your motorcycle is good. It wasn't about that. It's about providing as many observations and insights as an owner of all three bikes as I can. I want you guys to pick whatever is right for you, and I want to help you make an informed decision. Because look, at the end of the day, the V7 might be the best mid-size retro motorcycle for me, but that doesn't mean it has to be the best mid-size retro motorcycle for you. I'm Adrian from eMotorcycle. I make videos that help motorcyclists, and my sincere thank you to everyone who watched this series and came along for this adventure, came along for this ride with me. You guys left me over 1,100 comments where you shared your opinions, your feedback, and you taught me things. I've read all of your comments. I'm still trying to reply to all of your comments. You guys hit that like button over 5,500 times, which I really appreciate your feedback and your support. That does mean a lot, and it does help this channel. It helps me out a lot. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. As always, ride safe, but have fun. Peace.
Whoa!